Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to another one of Kinetics' regular monthly webinars. It's 10 o'clock and we'll kick into it. Today's question that we raised in our invitation was how secure is your cloud IT? And I'm really pleased to have our partners Augment join us for this webinar because they've got the opportunity to take us through some of the enhanced Microsoft security services that we actually deploy in our Care for Security and our Care Foundation cybersecurity offerings. I'll just start running through a few of the agenda items and a little bit of housekeeping. But firstly, I think I'll introduce Stephen Tomiko. And welcome, Stephen, to the webinar. How are you?
Good morning. I'm great. How are you?
Very well, thanks. Very well. Now, Stephen's a very interesting gentleman. I know why he's in the dangerous waters of cybersecurity because he's a master diver, and he tells me he likes nothing better than to go diving with hammerhead sharks. So, you know, swimming with the sharks is, I suppose, where we want our cybersecurity experts to come from. So, welcome aboard.
Thank you very much.
So, you know, for today's session, we'll just run through a little bit about what is Augment, and Stephen will take us through that, and then I'll tell you a little bit about how it relates to Kinetics service offerings. Firstly, we'll start with some housekeeping. The whole seminar will be recorded, and we'll make this available after the webinar itself. All your microphones are on mute at the moment, but please feel free to use the chat function to ask questions throughout the seminar, and we'll either address them as they come up or we'll hold them for the Q&A at the end of the session. We'll also post a copy of this presentation at the end of the seminar for your reference and also for you to distribute to your teams, as will be a link to YouTube version of the presentation itself, because these are designed to really be educational for you and your teams. So please feel free to share. All right, so let's just forward through, and Stephen, if you could just kick us off as to what is Augment.
Yeah, absolutely. So we here at Augment are a cybersecurity vendor based in Canada, and what we're trying to do is to make SaaS security easy. Obviously, the most common SaaS app in the world is Microsoft, so that's where we started. And we're able to, streamline security practices, put proactive and reactive security in place, give us alerts when things look untoward in our Microsoft environment. And on top of that, we can also give you visibility into all the other apps your business is interacting with that you maybe can't lock down.
So you as a brand haven't seen you out in the domain. Are you mainly dealing with MSPs, or how does that work?
Yeah, 100%. We're 100% channel focused, so we only sell to security professionals in the IT space. And our tools are specifically built to do that higher level security that's maybe a little bit complex in Microsoft.
Good stuff. Thank you, Stephen. So on to this next one as far as Augment and Kinetics. So Kinetics obviously fronts its cybersecurity offerings with brands like Care for Security and Care Foundation, which is our latest integrated security offerings. And I suppose the four things are where Augment really help us are on the left there, which is around the proactive 365 posture security. So looking at all of those elements that make up your current security posture under M365. And then real-time 365 threat response, really making sure that we're keeping a track of things as they happen. And it's really important for us to bring that to bear and give you an awareness of the timeliness of when these things come into play and how we can actually shut them down quickly. Then there's the software as a service app compliance audits. Now, software as a service, it's often really important to know what SaaS applications you have in your environment. And one of the key things that Augment does is on Shadow IT, and that's really looking at all the instances of SaaS IT that you have in your environment that not every IT professional in the business may be aware of. So it's really important for us to keep a track on that for your behalf. And then there's obviously the M365 user security, which is another key element. And these are deployed across, as I said, our Care for Security, our Care Foundation, and our Security Plus offerings. So just moving ahead, I'll let Stephen take us into, what the landscape looks like and what other sharks are swimming out there.
Yeah, and it was a good question from today's webinar. How secure is your cloud? And in reality, the answer to that is not as safe as we thought it was. I know at the beginning of the pandemic led to a big shift in a lot of our businesses. People were working from home, they were using their own devices. We're having all sorts of new cloud-based applications, and our businesses ran off being able to do that work. Unfortunately, bad actors have adapted, and since the start of the pandemic over the last 4 years, we've seen a 775% increase in people making attacks from cloud-based tools. So it's definitely a good time for us to be talking about cloud security, especially when it comes to items like Microsoft, which is probably going to be your most business critical SaaS tool. Now, with that in mind, obviously your biggest SaaS vendor, Microsoft, is going to be making some changes. So if we just hop over to the next slide, the reason that we're seeing Microsoft make so many changes in the last year is the bad actors have become more sophisticated. Nothing has proven this more than the Moab breach that happened 2 months ago. This is the biggest breach we've ever seen in history. Over 10 years worth of scraped data, 26 billion records exposed. And I'm sure you guys remember the Equifax breach from a few years ago and how massive that was. You can see that it's barely a blip on the radar compared to this breach. So bad actors are getting better at what they're doing, and we're going to have to adapt to make sure that we're not exposed to those people anymore.
Wow, that's really, really confronting. It's a major impact that one single breach can make.
Yeah, it was only by chance we caught this one too. The bad actor left a thumb drive behind.
Oh.
And that's the only reason we discovered that breach. That's how sophisticated they're getting.
Interesting.
And so, of course, we're seeing a big portion of that 775% is people coming straight for your Microsoft. And why that is, obviously, it's a hugely business critical tool for more than 95% of the world's businesses. It is the most attacked tool in the world. And the reason for that really is the cost of breaching a Microsoft account has never been lower. There is a whole ecosystem on the dark web that facilitates non-technical people like myself to run very sophisticated attacks for a couple of bucks. Just to put that into perspective for you guys, we can buy credentials on the dark web today, 1,000 usernames and passwords, 97 cents. If I wanted to buy in bulk, 400 million pairs for 150 bucks. So under 200 bucks, I could be running ransomware attacks, all sorts of attacks, just off available data. And it's not that people are targeting your business. It's just that the data is available because you've been on the cloud in the last 5 years. And if somebody was to come after your business specifically, as little as 13 cents to 82 cents to get your device. So again, we've never seen the cost of paid breaches this low. And just to put that in another context, you can buy ransomware kits on the dark web today, 66 bucks, run them against the credentials you have, or you can feed the producer of that ransomware some creds and he'll take 30% of your get. The average ransomware breach this year is $4.7 million. This is why we're seeing so many more people attack your Microsoft environment, because it's such a low investment for them for a potentially huge upside on the attack pulling off.
So are you saying, Stephen, that if I was cyber criminally inclined, I could actually get a full attack pack and just apply it to the credentials that I've got, and I wouldn't have to pay a cent? They would go off and do that on my behalf and just take a share of whatever they get.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it.
Well,
So
that is so scary.
yeah, absolutely. And when you look at the math there, for 66 bucks and 97 cents, potentially I could have made $4 million right there.
Right.
And that's why we're seeing so many bad actors get into the Microsoft space right now. The cost has never been this low. And because we've moved into the cloud, suddenly there are more vectors and angles for people to come at us.
Well,
So
yeah,
it is a bit of a worrying concern.
and I suppose it takes away that question: is, am I big enough to be worried about? If it costs them nothing to attack you in the first place, why would they care? That's
And
really
yeah,
interesting.
and that's the thing. No one's too small anymore, because from the latest data, over 67% of businesses who do get affected by ransomware pay the ransom. The reason they keep running these attacks is because they keep getting paydays. So we need
Interesting.
to do something to make sure that they don't have a chance with us.
Well, let's talk about the things that we are doing to make sure they don't have a chance.
That's a great call. Great call. So obviously, it's not us who's, asking you guys to make any changes to the way you guys do security. Our key vendor, Microsoft, has changed how they do security in order to
Mm,
deal with things like the Moab breach. Now, I know
mm,
there's some acronyms up on the screen there, but I'll make this fairly simple. Um, Microsoft used to run security off what they call delegated admin privileges. Now that was great, gave us a lot of power on the back end. However, if an admin account was breached, the bad actor would have access to all the toys. So what Microsoft has rolled out is their GDAP program, which is granular delegated access permissions, which means that each user will have to be added to a security group and given specific permissions, and then have those permissions time bound. So only the right person has the right access at the right time to the right tools. By doing that, much more increased security, we have a much more solid setup. And in fact, if anything does happen, it's the first question your insurer will ask is, did your Microsoft users have GDAP set up and was MFA enforced? So from a security point of view, it behooves us to get on board with Microsoft's change. If you haven't made the change yourself, Microsoft will do it for you in the next coming weeks in the APAC area. So we're all going to have to get on this. The
yeah.
unfortunate thing is this: Microsoft has chosen to paywall security features as of this year. That means that the tools that we need to do the security work to secure Microsoft are locked behind P1 licenses and P2 licenses. And those licenses only come standard with certain packages like Microsoft Premium.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Stephen. And just for the comfort of the people on the call who are Care for Security and Foundation customers, we've already made this transition to GDAP, and all of those environments have MFA already in place. But for those who don't, to have it enforced is going to come as a rude shock. So it's something that we're here to help with.
Yep. And don't feel like it's just you. All of us have had to do this. We work quite closely with Microsoft. We
Yeah.
had to redo all of our security relationships, all of our security configuration to meet the new standards. But the good news is this: once we've done that, we're much more secure, and we're locking the door on all those bad actors who are coming after us on the dark web there.
Right.
And so the next thing here is we actually have a success story from a partner here at Kinetics, and I'll let Matt take us away there and give us the timeline on this event.
Yeah, so look, this is a really good one to talk about because the threat was identified and it was 19 minutes. The incident had been alerted, reviewed, and the actions taken, and further investigation was started. So, we had a situation where a decision had been made to terminate an employee with a final date agreed. The week before the final day of the employment, Augment provided an alert to our Care for Security team. And this is the breakdown. 2:41 p.m. Care team receives Augment alert for attempted mass download via SharePoint. So that's someone downloading or trying to download information as they were exiting the business. Account identified as a terminated employee. The account was blocked. The CTO was informed and the alert steps taken. And the account confirmed to be blocked. Files prevented from download, and the incident attributed to wasn't attributed to that individual employee. So there's a live example of where Augment and our Care securities services team, our Care team, were able to actually shut something down that was live in action. And so that's a really good example of how these tools and how the combination of our services can be put in place.
And I really love this example too, because it also highlights the fact that threats aren't always external.
That's right.
Sometimes they're going to come from inside the house, and we're able to see those events as well.
Absolutely.
Um, and there's a really great example of how, Kinetics is helping to keep you guys safe, by having the ability to put that strong security baseline in place for your Microsoft users, the ability to monitor for anything else that might happen beyond our baseline, and the ability to recover any data that does get lost should a sophisticated attack get through. That's like gold standard. It's the best you could ask for there, especially when it comes to your Microsoft data and your Microsoft users.
Good point.
So generally what we'd say is the first step in securing that baseline is to have some good security hygiene. Now, basic security hygiene comes in three steps here. The first thing is least privileged access. So again, like we said before, we want to make sure that only the right people at the right time have the right access to the right tools. The next thing we're going to do is enable MFA so that those people, when they do have access, we're going to challenge them every time they want access to ensure that that is indeed the right person. And that's going to stop a good 98% of our attacks right there. The next thing we're going to do is start locking down our Microsoft data with conditional access policies so that our data stays safe and the interactions that people can have with that data are limited so that less damage can be done should something happen. Once we've done that, we can do better, because what we're going to start doing is enforcing a strong baseline inside your Microsoft environment to make sure your users are protected, your data is protected, and we're meeting Microsoft's own compliance. So Microsoft has their own security compliance, the CIS compliance, and obviously when they're looking at events that happen in their system, their first questions are going to be, did you meet the security compliance for this posture? And by using a tool like Augment, we can track all of that, make sure that all our CIS security points are up first, and that we're meeting the safety guidelines that our own vendor is telling us we need to meet to have a secure product.
Right.
And we can do even better than that. Because once we've set up that strong baseline, we can sit on top of the environment and monitor all the interactions as they come through. So as we spot potentially threatening behavior, we can identify the user and the event, take action to lock those bad actors out of your environment, reset their passwords, log them out of all their Microsoft apps, so that we can take direct action within minutes. And the final thing, obviously, is we're going to help back up your data. And by doing this, should one of those sophisticated attacks get through, Kinetics will have you back up and running in no time, and that's going to be a real benefit to your business. No downtime there, no loss of reputation, no loss of potential deals as the event gets sorted out. Now, what we're really doing for you there on the Microsoft side is solving for all your security reporting when it comes to Microsoft, as well as being able to intervene and take action when security events happen. We're able to give you threat assessments because, as is always the case, the threat landscape will change again eventually. So we need to constantly assess and make sure we're not exposed anywhere. We're able to push those proactive baselines, give you real-time threat response to anything that's happening, do full MFA configuration and audit across all of your users, and give you a summary of all that great work that we've just undertaken in your environment to keep you safe. So we're really helping to give you guys the data and sort of demystify some of the security that you see in Microsoft.
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. Shall we move on to the next one, which is, I suppose, the
Yeah.
part of the picture you don't always see from the surface?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we've talked about Microsoft being a business critical SaaS tool, but Microsoft's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to our SaaS. In our day-to-day business, we're going to be interacting with possibly hundreds of different applications to get our job done. And this raises an issue that we call shadow IT. And if we just hop over to the next slide, and what shadow IT really is the difference between what you think you're using and what you're actually using. And this issue was exacerbated quite a bit during the pandemic, obviously, with people deciding to work from home, and they had company cards. They'd just be signing up to whatever SaaS tool they could to get the job done, and as a result, a lot of our corporate data was living on SaaS apps that maybe weren't vetted by our team, maybe management didn't know about. And obviously, people have personal preferences as well. They'd rather use this tool over this tool, so they'll just start using that from their web browser. Now, for efficiency, fantastic. For security, absolute nightmare, because we don't know where our data lives. Are these trustworthy people? Who's using these applications? Where do they come from? So if we hop forward, that's the real issue that we're trying to solve here, is to give you visibility to the rest of that iceberg, all those applications that are used by your employees that maybe we don't know about. Now, good news and bad news, they could be great tools and we could approve them very easily, but we need to know about them first. So this is a problem that Augment helps to solve. So the top four concerns we're really going to deal with here, if we hop over, is the risk of data breach and data loss by housing our corporate and potentially personal data inside an unvetted SaaS application that we know nothing about. We don't know where they're storing our data. We don't even know if they have good security in place to keep our data safe. By doing that, we could also be breaching any compliances we work in. Most compliances, be it HIPAA, GDPR, PCI, will have an approved and not approved list of applications that they want an environment to interact with so that the data stays safe. And we have a great tool for being able to vet those applications to make sure they fit in with our requirements, especially if you're in financial, medical, or legal services. The other big thing that we tackle is cost. Something that came out of the pandemic, which was really shocking for a lot of business owners, was that we found out that most companies were spending 40% more than they needed to on their SaaS budget because all the employees were expensing all these great tools from home so they could get their jobs done, and no one was really keeping track of who was paying for what and whether that app was being used appropriately or not. Which leads me to my next point, which is productivity. If you're paying for really expensive and great SaaS tools, we need to make sure we're using them. If you have a complex solution like Salesforce or Ansana in your environment and you only see one person logging in and you have 5 licenses, we either need to reduce the number of licenses there or retrain some people so that they're leveraging our tools and getting the most productivity they can out of what we're paying for.
Yeah, you'll be pleased to hear, Stephen, we've used this in a number of scenarios with existing clients where we've identified perhaps a training issue that might be required, and we've used adoption change management type techniques for our Cambium team to help those
Excellent.
users come up to speed.
Perfect. And so, what are we really trying to solve here with all this SaaS app visibility? If we hop across, the first thing that we're really doing here is helping you with compliance and breach reduction. So we're able to look at all the apps that your employees are using currently, and we're able to tell, does that app use MFA, which is our bare minimum security requirement for ourselves? It's what we'd expect from our vendors. Does the app support SSO, which is a single sign-on, which is another type of authentication method that would sit on top of MFA? Does it meet our compliance needs? And quite critically, when was the last time this app was reported to be breached? And there's a link straight out of product to that report that gives all the details on that application. So with that data, we should be able to make a go, no-go decision on whether an app should be approved for use in our environment by making sure it's secure, meets our legal requirements, and we can trust that they're keeping our data safe. The other thing, as I mentioned earlier, is we're helping you a lot with productivity and cost. Now, obviously, a lot of tools are going to have a little bit of overlap, but if you're a Microsoft shop today, we shouldn't be paying for tools like Slack because we get Microsoft Teams for free. So as we're looking through the app list, we can see where there's overlap, maybe where we're paying double for a solution that does the same. We can start to eliminate any of those duplicate or overlapping apps so that we've got the right tool for the right job. And as I also mentioned earlier, if we're paying top dollar for a really good tool, something like a Salesforce, Asana, or something like that, we need to make sure that our people are using it and we're getting our return on investment for that piece of software. So we can also track who's been using what app and how much they've been using it, so that we can make sure that they're using the appropriate app at the appropriate time.
I think you're mentioning Slack is a really good example. There's a plethora of others that were actually used over COVID, and a lot of the things that we can do is to have a look at that stack of applications and making sure that they're actually being used as they should. So yeah, very, very helpful for the operations teams within our customers.
Perfect. And the final thing there is we've solved for reporting on third-party SaaS software. So as I mentioned, we can help you lock down your most business critical app, which is Microsoft. But for everything else, we give you the visibility and let you know who's been using what app, what type of app it was, what risk it poses to our business. Was it downloaded onto their desktop? Were they using it from their browser? And how much have they been interacting with this tool? So we're able to get a full overview of what tools should and shouldn't be in our environment, how much risk they expose us to, who's using them, and where we found them. So it's really great data to help building that approved app list. And one of the big things from having an approved app list is if you're ever to get breached by a third-party vendor, one of the first things that an insurance company will ask you is, did you approve this app for use in your environment?
Yeah.
And so we need to stay on top of that and make sure we're not exposing ourselves to anything that we shouldn't.
Good call. Right. So look, that's the end of the information that we're going to cover with this, and we'll have a quick Q&A right after this. I just want to say to everyone on the call, and everyone's watching the video, if you're not in a secure environment which is protected by tools that we've just talked about, the security hygiene, the proactive security posture, reactive threat protection, and data backup. If you're not in this environment with Kinetics already and you're thinking about it, don't wait. The time is no better time than now, because as Stephen mentioned earlier, the incidences of cyber threat and breach are just growing at an astonishing rate, and there's some simple things that we can do to protect your environment. So please reach out to your account manager. We're happy to schedule a 1-hour free cyber assessment for your organization, and seeing what things that we can put in place to protect you from the threats that we've been talking about today. That's the only plug I'll put in here, and I think we'll go to a question and answer session now. Is there any questions from the audience? We'd be keen to have them.
There's no questions at this stage, Matt, but I guess keen to understand a little bit about, from my perspective, the cyber assessment. Does that include some shadow IT detection as well, or is that a different set of questions, different set of metrics, do you think?
Well, the cybersecurity assessment would actually have to have the tool implemented within the customer's environment to be able to pick up that shadow IT. So in the first instance, no, but from a questionnaire perspective, we'll come out and do an assessment and then come back with a report.
Brilliant. Excellent. Thanks.
No problem. Anything else out there? And if there's topics that come out of the video, or any questions that come from this, we're happy to follow up. So please reach out to your account management team, and we'll be happy to answer any questions as they come through. If it requires us to come on site, happy to do that also.
Possibly a credit to Stefan too, because normally I have a few more questions at the end of a webinar, and I have nothing on my notepad. So
That's
well
fine.
done.
Making it easy for me.
Very much.
Good stuff. Well, we'll end the session there then. And as I say, if there's any follow-up questions, please don't hesitate to call us. Thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thanks, guys.